Algebra 1, Lesson 58, Multiplying Polynomials. So today we're going to talk about how we multiply polynomials. This right here, 12 plus 14, is a polynomial. There's a really simple way to do it. You could add the 12 and the 14 together and then multiply that answer by 2. But for the sake of figuring out how to multiply polynomials, I'm going to show you without adding these two numbers together. You do 2 times 12 and 2 times 14. You multiply 2 by every single term inside the polynomial. So 2 times 12, don't forget your plus sign, 2 times 14. 2 times 12 is 24, 2 times 14 is 28. Add them together and your answer is 52. So if you come across, this is with just numbers, but if you come across a polynomial, this is a polynomial, it has two terms, and a monomial has one term. To figure out how to solve these, it's telling you to multiply. You're going to take whatever's on the outside, in this case it's a 3x, and you're going to multiply it by each term inside the polynomial. There's two terms here. So the way we solve it is we do 3x times our first term, which is x squared. Don't forget your plus sign. Then we're going to do 3x times our next term, which is y. And then we just solve it. 3, the coefficient in front of here is 1. You never write the 1 in front. So our coefficient is going to be 3x times x squared. We have 1x and 2 more x's, so we're going to have x cubed. Same thing here. Don't forget your plus sign. 3 times 1 is 3. X times y is xy. So this is our answer. Not too complicated. Right here, negative 4xy times x squared plus y minus 2z squared. So there are 3 terms inside the polynomial. We're going to take negative 4xy, multiply it by every single term. So we have negative 4xy times our first term, which is x squared. Don't forget your plus. And then I'm going to put parentheses around the negative just so we don't get confused. Negative 4xy times our next term, which is y. And I ran out of space, plus our first term, which is negative 4xy, times our second term, which is negative 2z squared. Okay, this means to multiply, and then also two parentheses next to each other means to multiply. We're going to multiply these together and see what we get. Negative 4, the coefficient here is 1, so we have negative 4 as our coefficient. At 1x and 2x's, we get 3x's, x cubed, y here, and there's no y there. All right, then we have negative 4 times 1 is going to be negative 4. So a positive and a negative, that equals negative. There's no other x's, so we're just going to have 1x, 1y, and 1y is 2y's. Then our last term, negative 4xy times negative 2z squared. Negative 4 times negative 2, our coefficient is going to be positive 8 because two negatives make a positive. There's only one x in each term, one y in each term, and then z squared is only over here, so z squared. And that's your answer. Example 2, this was a monomial with a polynomial. Now we're going to multiply two polynomials together, and we're going to use distributive property. Just what we were doing up here. So we're going to multiply, take this first term of our first polynomial, and we're going to multiply it by each term in our second polynomial. Our first term is x. We're going to multiply it by our first term here, so times x. And then take this first term and multiply it by the second term in our second polynomial. So it's going to be plus, because we have a plus. This is positive and this is positive. X times 3. I'm going to put all of these in parentheses so it's pretty easy for us to figure out. Then we're done with this first x. We're going to move to the second term, which is a 7, and multiply it by both terms in our second polynomial. So 7 times x, and then 7 times 3. Pay attention to your signs. These are all positive signs, so everything's going to stay positive. Our first term, x times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x. We always write our coefficient first. 7 times x is 7x. 7 times 3 is 21. Any like terms, you want to add them together. We only have one term with x squared, so that's going to stay the same. We have a term with x and another term with x. What we add together, we don't add our exponents, we add the coefficients, the numbers in front, 3 plus 7. So we get 10x, so our coefficient stays the same, it's just 1 plus 21. And this is our answer. And then right here, I'm gonna draw a little line. Two polynomials, we're gonna take our first term, multiply it by each term in our second polynomial, x times x. Okay, plus x times negative 7. Gonna have to move this to brackets. Plus, we're done with our first term, we're gonna move to our second term, negative 5 times both of these terms. Negative 5 times x. And then negative 5 times negative 7. Now we'll simplify. X times x, we get x squared. X times negative 7, it's going to be negative 7x. So positive and a negative make a negative. Negative 5 times x is going to be negative 5x. Negative 5 times negative 7 is positive 35 because two negatives make a positive. Any like terms, we're going to add them together. We're going to combine them. This is the only x squared term. It's going to stay the same. But we have negative 7x and negative 5x. Just pretend like they're positives. What's 7 plus 5? It's 12. But since they're both negative, it's going to be negative 12. And then plus 35. So that's the answer for that. What we just did on this example A and B, we used what is called the FOIL method. F-O-I-L. F stands for first, outer, inner, and last. First, outer, inner, last. That is how you multiply two polynomials together. So if we had x plus 2 is our first polynomial, x plus 3 is our second one, if we're multiplying them together, you multiply your first two terms in each polynomial. Our first term here is x, first term here is x. Then you do your two outside terms. The outside term here is x, and the outside term here is 3. X times 3, we'd get 3x. Okay, so first we have x squared, then we have 3x. Then our inner terms, 2 is the inside term and x is the inside term. 2 times x is 2x. Right here, our last two terms, our last term in this polynomial is 2, and the last term here is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Everything's positive, so these are all going to be positive. Our answer, x squared, that's the only x squared term, 3x plus 2x, we add these numbers together, we get 5x, and then plus 6. That's how you do FOIL method. Our next example, we have two polynomials, but now we have this variable has a coefficient for the first term in each polynomial. So we use the same method we did on our last two examples, FOIL method. So we take our first, if you aren't going to remember, first, outer, inner, last, and use arrows, okay? So our first term here is 2a, our first term in our second polynomial is 3a. 2a times 3a. Plus, so we did our first one. Our outer terms, this is an outside term, 2a, and 1 is an outside term. We're going to multiply those two together. So 2a times 1. Plus our inner terms, 5 is an inner term and 3a is an inner term. 5 times 3a. Plus our last two terms, 5 and 1. 5 times 1. Now we just multiply it, simplify them. 2a times 3a, we multiply our coefficients, 2 times 3, and a times a, we have 2a's, so it's going to be a squared. Right here, 2a times 1. Well, anything times 1 is going to be the same, so it's just 2a. 5 times 3a, we multiply the coefficients. 5 times 3 is 15, and we just have 1a, so it's a. Here, 5 times 1 is 5. Add any like terms together. We only have one a squared term, so it's just going to stay as 6a squared. We have 2a and 15a. Add the coefficients, 2 and 15, you get 17a. And then right here, 5. Okay, that one was all positive numbers. Here, we're going to have one that has some negatives, so you really have to pay attention to your signs. We're going to use FOIL, first, outside, inside, last, or first, outer, inner, last. Our first two terms, 8k and negative 3k. We're going to have to use brackets, times a negative 3k. If you aren't familiar with grouping and how you group things like with parentheses, brackets, and braces, you can do a brush up on that on Khan Academy or YouTube. Okay, so we did our first two terms. Our second term, our outside terms are 8k and negative 5. So plus, and we're going to put 8k times, in parentheses, negative 5. Okay, our inner terms are negative 1 and negative 3k. So plus negative 1 times negative 3k. And our last terms are negative 1 and negative 5. Plus negative 1 times negative 5. Now we'll just simplify. 8k times negative 3k. Multiply your coefficients, so you get negative 24. K times k is k squared. 8k times negative 5, our coefficients, 8 times negative 5 is going to make it a negative 40 because here's a positive out here, and then we just have 1k. Negative 1 times negative 3k, multiply our coefficients, it's going to be plus 3, and we just have 1k. And then negative 1 times negative 5 is going to be a positive 5. Now all you have to do is add your like terms. We only have one k squared term, so it's going to stay as negative 24k squared. We have two k terms. You add the coefficients negative 4 and positive 3. That's going to be negative 37k plus 5. So when you have any negative numbers, make sure you're very, very careful with them because it will change the answer if you are not paying attention. Okay, example 4 is a polynomial, and we also have a polynomial with 3 terms. Okay, so this is called, because there's 3 terms, it's called a trinomial. Okay, a binomial has 2 terms and trinomial has 3. So these polynomials, we're going to use FOIL method, kind of. It's more like distributive property, but we will take our first term and multiply it by every term in our second polynomial. So first, we're going to take 3x. We're going to multiply it by our first term here, which is x squared, plus 3x times our second term, which is negative 4x. And then 3x times our last term, which is negative 6. We did our first term here. Now we're going to move to our second term and multiply it by every single term in our trinomial. So it's going to be 4 times x squared. And then we have 4 times negative 4x. Then we have 4 times negative 6. Okay, now we simplify. 3 times 1 is 3, and we have 1x and 2x, we get 3x's. 3x cubed. 3x times negative 4x, 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. We have 2x's, so it's going to be x squared. 3x times negative 6, 3 times negative 6 is negative 18, and we have 1x. Here we have 4 times x squared, so 4 times 1 is 4, and then x squared, we have 2x's. Here, 4 times negative 4x, 4 times negative 4 is negative 16, and we have 1x. 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. Now we add any like terms. We only have one x cubed term, so it's going to stay as 3x cubed. We have an x squared here. This is an x, and this is an x squared. We're going to add the coefficients. -4 plus 4 is -8 x squared. Now I'm going to circle our x terms. -18x, -16x. 18 plus 16, or -18 plus -16 is -34x. And what's left over is our -24, our constant right there. And that's your answer. 3x cubed minus 8x squared minus 34x minus 24. Now, you can also use the distributive property if you're trying to find the area of some polynomial. I'm sorry, some shape. So on example 5, it says, find the area of a rectangular sandbox that has a width of 2x squared plus 5x minus 6 and a length of 4x plus 7. Draw a picture. Just draw a little rectangle. It says our width, so from here to here, is 2x squared plus 5x minus 6, and our length, or our height, is 4x plus 7. And it's in inches. So all we have to do, the area of a rectangle is length times width. So length times width. Our length is right here, and our width is right here. I'm sorry, I did it the wrong way, but that's okay. L times W. All right. 2x squared plus 5x minus 6, 4x plus 7. So length times width, we're gonna do distributive property, okay? A lot of times it's easier to have 4x plus 7 first, so let's rearrange that. The smaller polynomial first. It really doesn't matter. You'll still get the same answer, but sometimes it's easier for people to see it written this way, with our smaller polynomial first and our bigger one second. We're going to take our first term, multiply it by every term here. Our second term, multiply it by every one here. I'm not going to write it all out. I'm just going to do it in my head. 4x times 2x squared is 8x cubed. 4x times 5x, 20x squared. 4x times -6, -24x. Okay, now we're going to do our second term, multiply it by every term here. 7 times 2x squared, 14x squared. 7 times 5x, 35x. 7 times -6 is -42. And now just add your like terms together. We only have one x cubed term. We have x squared and x squared. I encourage you to underline, circle, put a box around your like terms. So I'm underlining my x squared terms. 20 plus 14 is 34x squared. Now I'm going to circle my x terms. -24 plus 35 is positive 11x. And then we have our constant of -42. This right here is the area of the rectangle in terms of a polynomial. So if you were to find out what this x stood for, you'd be able to get an actual number. Your homework is lesson 58, the practice problems A through I.